What do you do when you buy a coffee from your own cafe, and the barista quietly tells you they gave a meal to a hungry child without permission? Russell O'Connor had inherited the coffee chain from his father 6 years ago. 16 locations across 3 states. Business was steady, profits decent, but lately customer reviews had started dipping at a few stores. Nothing alarming yet, but what bothered him more was the tone of the complaints. Cold service, unfriendly staff, long waits, no smiles. He hated reading that. His dad built the business on warmth and community. It wasn't just coffee, it was supposed to be family. Russell had never worked a day in one of the cafes. His father kept him on the corporate side. Numbers, strategy, expansion. But lately, sitting behind spreadsheets felt useless. The company had grown too fast. He didn't know the baristas. They didn't know him. Most wouldn't even recognize him. And in a chain that size, especially with turnover, that made sense. Most of them had only seen his name on pay stubs or emails they probably didn't read. So Russell decided to go undercover, not as an employee this time, just as a customer. No camera crews, no assistants, just a quiet visit to one of the cafes that had been getting mixed reviews lately. Store number 9, tucked beside a strip mall in New Jersey. He picked it randomly, not because of any specific complaint, but because it was far enough from the corporate office that nobody there would know his face. He grew a beard, let his graying hair grow out, wore a worn hoodie, and put on thick glasses. He looked more like someone who just rolled out of a library than a CEO. He called himself Ron. It was a Tuesday morning when he walked in, just before the rush. The place wasn't busy yet. A couple of students on laptops, a man in a suit waiting at the counter. The space felt clean but quiet. Too quiet. No music. No chatting. Just the buzz of an espresso machine. A young woman behind the counter noticed him. She had her curly hair tied back, apron smudged with a coffee stain on the bottom corner. Her name tag read Mira. "Hey there," she said, her voice tired but kind. "Welcome in. What can I get started for you?" "Medium drip. Black." She nodded, moved fast, and handed him the cup within seconds. "Anything else?" He shook his head, pulled a crumpled $5 bill from his pocket, and dropped it in the tip jar. She gave him a small smile, the first he'd seen since walking in. He took a seat near the window and watched. Over the next 20 minutes, the cafe filled slowly. Mira handled every order with calm speed. The other barista, a blond guy named Tyler, barely looked up from his phone unless someone called his name. At one point, Mira asked him to restock the milk fridge. He rolled his eyes and walked off without saying a word. Russell frowned, but he stayed quiet. He didn't come here to fire anyone based off 10 minutes of bad attitude. He came to listen. When the rush died down, he stepped back to the counter. "Hey," he said, "mind if I ask you something?" Mira blinked. "Sure. I'm thinking of applying here. What's it really like?" She paused, looked around, and leaned in a little. "It's okay," she said slowly. "Management's never around. We're short-staffed most days. Tyler barely does anything. But I'm used to it." Russell nodded. "Sounds rough." "It is. But it's not all bad," she added. "Some things make it worth it." "Like what?" She glanced at him. "You're not gonna rat me out, right?" He shook his head. "Promise." She hesitated, then said, "A few weeks ago, this little girl came in, maybe 8 or 9. She was alone, sat at the corner table with a backpack and kept staring at the pastry case. I asked if she was waiting for someone. She said no. Said she wasn't hungry, just cold." Russell felt his stomach tighten. "I asked where her parents were. She said her mom was at work. I offered her a hot chocolate, said it was on the house, then gave her a sandwich too. Store policy says we can't give away food, but I couldn't let her sit there like that." He stared at her. You gave her food, he said. I didn't ask anyone, Mira said. I just did it. I figured if I got written up, fine. But she looked like she needed it. She said her mom works night shifts and sometimes forgets to pack lunch. Russell looked down at the counter. There it was. A single act of quiet kindness. No cameras. No one watching. Just a kid and a barista who made a choice. Did anyone find out? He asked. No. Except Tyler. He told me I was being stupid. Said I'd get fired if the district manager saw the cameras. Russell looked up at her. And you'd do it again? In a heartbeat. He didn't say much after that. Just thanked her, left a second tip and walked out with his coffee. But his hands were shaking. Russell returned the following morning, arriving just before sunrise. The cafe opened at 6, and from the parking lot, he could already see lights on inside. He waited until the doors were unlocked, then stepped in as the first customer of the day. A different barista stood behind the counter this time. Tall, early 20s, hair buzzed short. His name tag read, Eli. He nodded without smiling. Drip coffee medium, Russell said, rubbing his hands together from the early chill. Eli poured it wordlessly and passed the cup across. He didn't offer sugar. Didn't ask if Russell wanted anything else. Just turned back toward the espresso machine like he was alone. Russell slid a few coins into the tip jar. Eli didn't look up. He sat near the front again, sipping slowly, watching the rhythm of the opening hour. The cafe stayed quiet for a good 15 minutes. Then Mira walked in through the back door, her hair still damp from a shower. She looked tired, but her eyes lit up slightly when she saw him. Hey, she said, stepping behind the counter. Back again. Yeah, he replied. Place has good coffee. She smiled, then glanced at Eli, who barely acknowledged her. Mira washed her hands and got straight to prepping syrups and checking pastries. Russell noticed her take a quick inventory of what was low, jotting it on a sticky note, then slipping it onto the side of the espresso machine. Morning, Eli, she said, not expecting much. Yeah, he muttered. Russell watched as a few more customers trickled in. Mira handled most of the orders. Eli stuck to drinks, barely engaging. At one point, a customer asked if they had oat milk. Eli shrugged. If it's not out there, we don't got it. Mira gently stepped in. We've got one more carton in the back. I'll grab it. She disappeared momentarily and came back with the milk. The customer thanked her, and Mira rang them up with a quiet, "Hope your day starts off smooth." As the customer walked off, Russell heard Eli mutter, "You're not a waitress, you know?" Mira ignored him. An hour passed. The cafe filled steadily. At one point, a guy in a delivery uniform came in with 2 crates of supplies. He set them down by the side counter and approached Eli. Need someone to sign. Eli didn't move. Mira stepped forward, wiped her hands, took the tablet, and signed. Where do you want these? The delivery guy asked. I'll take them, she said. Thanks. Russell watched as she carried both crates heavy, by the look of them, into the back room alone. Eli leaned on the counter, scrolling through his phone. By 9:30, the line stretched to the door. Mira moved fast, bouncing between register and prep. Eli made drinks, but slowly, like he didn't want to be there. A woman in a business suit got the wrong order. She'd asked for a chai latte. Got a cappuccino instead. When she brought it up, Eli barely looked at her. You said cappuccino. No, I didn't. He shrugged. Whatever. Russell put his coffee down and stood. Mira noticed. Ron, you okay? I'll be back in a minute, he said. He stepped outside, pulled out his phone, and called Amanda, his operations director. She picked up on the second ring. Russell, I need you to pull the employee file for an Eli at Store 9. I want his hiring date, performance reviews, and any complaints. Sure. Why? Just send it. And if there's a regional supervisor scheduled to visit this week, cancel it. I'll be handling this personally. He hung up and went back inside. Mira was handling the register again, trying to ring up 3 customers at once, while Eli leaned against the counter sipping a smoothie he hadn't paid for. By 10:15, the rush died down. Mira wiped the counter, then leaned against the bakery case to catch her breath. Russell stepped up. "You okay?" She nodded. "Just one of those mornings." He lowered his voice. "You always pick up the slack like that?" She hesitated. "Only when I have to." Russell looked at Eli, who was now watching a video with his earbuds partially in. "You ever talk to your manager about it?" "She knows," Mira said. "But he's been here longer than me. And she says we're short-staffed, so we need him." Russell watched her for a long moment. "You ever think of quitting?" "Sometimes," she admitted. "But I need the hours. And I like some of the people who come in. I don't want to leave just because someone else doesn't care." He nodded slowly. "Is the manager here today?" "No. She's only here Thursdays and Saturdays. Rest of the week, she checks in over text." Figures, Russell thought. A young man walked in, wearing a faded hoodie and rubbing his eyes. He looked barely awake. "Hey," Mira said. "You just getting off shift?" "Yeah. Bus driver let me off a stop early, so I figured I'd grab something before crashing." Mira reached behind the counter, pulled a scone from the tray, and handed it to him in a bag. "On me." The guy blinked. "You serious? Don't tell anyone." He gave her a grateful nod and left. Eli watched from the corner of his eye. "Again?" he said. "You're gonna get fired." "No one's starving on my watch," Mira said, not looking at him. Eli scoffed. "Place isn't a soup kitchen." Russell stepped forward. "You ever think maybe people come in here for more than caffeine?" Eli turned. "Who are you?" "Just a guy who buys coffee." "You sound like you work corporate or something." Russell smiled faintly. "Something like that." Eli rolled his eyes. "Whatever, man." Mira looked between them, confused. Russell checked his watch. "I'll be back tomorrow. Same time." Eli muttered something under his breath. Russell didn't catch it, but he caught the tone. Outside, Russell climbed into his rental car and sat there for a few minutes in silence. Then he pulled out his phone again. "Hey, Amanda. I need someone from HR to meet me at store 9 tomorrow morning. Quietly. No uniforms, no name tags. Just get someone there. We're going to have a conversation." Russell arrived early again, this time parking in the far corner of the lot. He stayed in the car until he saw the HR representative walk up tall, brisk-paced, mid-40s, blazer over a plain sweater. Her name was Nora, one of the few people at headquarters he trusted to handle delicate situations without broadcasting them across the company. He stepped out to meet her, keeping his voice low. "Thanks for coming." She adjusted her bag strap. "You want to brief me before we go in? I'll debrief you afterward. For now, just observe. No titles, no questions unless I ask. I'll handle the reveal." She nodded once, understanding. Inside, the cafe was already open. A different barista, a quiet man named Javier, was stocking napkins near the condiment station. Mira hadn't arrived yet. Eli stood behind the register, chewing gum and scrolling through something on the screen. He glanced up, barely registering them. Russell ordered another drip coffee. Nora asked for tea. Eli moved slowly, tapping the screen with exaggerated annoyance. "That'll be $7.20. Russell handed over exact change. Eli dropped the coins into the drawer like it was a chore. No eye contact. No greeting. No thanks. They sat in the corner booth, the one nearest the hallway to the restrooms. From there, they had a clear view of the counter, prep station, and front door. Russell said nothing for a while. He wanted Nora to see it for herself. At 6:35, Mira walked in. Her steps were slower than the day before. She wore the same shoes, now more worn at the soles. She nodded at Javier, then pulled on her apron without speaking. Her eyes looked heavier, not tired, strained. Russell leaned toward Nora. "She's the reason we're here." Nora followed his gaze, watching as Mira immediately began wiping down the espresso machine, checking the grinder and prepping cups. Eli stepped aside to let her take over the register. Not a word between them. 10 minutes later, a customer approached the counter, an older man with a walking cane and a wrinkled coat. Mira greeted him warmly, offering to carry his drink to the table. He accepted with a chuckle. As she walked back to the counter, Eli watched her, then muttered something under his breath. Russell couldn't hear it, but Myra's expression changed. She didn't respond. She just kept moving. By 7:15, the line reached the door. Mira handled most of it while Javier worked drinks. Eli barely moved from his spot near the pastry case. Occasionally, he'd refill something small, but never when asked, only when it suited him. Then something shifted. A young woman came in. She wore a hijab and carried a laptop bag. Mira greeted her the same as everyone else. Eli, who hadn't spoken in 20 minutes, suddenly laughed under his breath and leaned toward Javier. "Bet she's not here for the coffee." Javier gave him a sharp look. "Don't start. She's probably just using the Wi-Fi. Drop it. Whatever. Just saying." Mira froze mid-step, her back to them. Then she turned. "That's enough." Eli looked at her, eyebrows raised. "Excuse me? You heard me. Don't say things like that. Not here. It was a joke." "No, it wasn't." Russell stood. Nora placed her cup down, quiet but alert. Eli turned toward Mira fully now, voice louder. "Since when do you run this place? You can't talk about customers like that. I've worked here longer than you. Don't act like you're the boss." "You don't have to work here at all," Russell said, stepping forward. Eli blinked. "What?" Mira looked between them, confused. Javier stepped back, instinctively distancing himself. Russell took off his glasses. Then the hat. Then the hoodie. "I'm Russell O'Connor," he said, "owner of this company. And we're done pretending." Eli stiffened. "What, wait, you're—" "Yes, and I've watched you ignore customers, disrespect coworkers, and now make assumptions about someone based on how they look. That's not just unprofessional, it's unacceptable." Eli's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "You've got no idea what it's like working here. We're short-staffed every day. So that gives you license to harass people? It was a joke." Russell turned to Nora. "Document it. Effective immediately, he's terminated. Final check process today. Escort him off the premises." Eli's face turned red. "You can't. You're done," Nora said firmly. "You're seriously firing me over that?" Russell stepped closer. "No, I'm firing you because this isn't the first time. I've seen how you treat people when you think no one's watching. You make this place worse, and I'm finished letting that slide." Eli glanced at Javier. "You're just gonna let this happen?" Javier didn't answer. Eli threw his apron on the counter and stormed out, brushing past customers without a word. The door slammed behind him. Silence hung in the air. Mira stared at Russell, stunned. "You're really him?" He nodded. "I came here to see things for myself. And what I saw was you carrying this place on your back." Mira looked down, overwhelmed. "I didn't think anyone noticed." "I noticed, and I should have noticed sooner." Javier stepped forward. "What about the rest of us?" "You'll get the support you should have had weeks ago," Russell said. "No more skeleton crews. No more absent management. I'm restructuring how we staff and supervise stores, starting with this one. Full audit. New hiring. And you," He looked at Mira. You're not staying in this role. Her breath caught. I'm not firing you, he said quickly. I'm promoting you. Starting next week, you'll be assistant manager of this location. Full pay increase, benefits upgrade, and I want you involved in rebuilding this staff. I've never managed before. You already are. You just don't have the title. Mira blinked fast, nodding slowly. Nora stepped forward. We'll handle all the paperwork. You'll get proper training. But your instincts, we already trust those. A customer near the front, having heard most of it, clapped once, then twice. A few others joined in quietly, respectfully. Myra's face flushed. Russell turned to Javier. You good staying on today? Javier nodded. Absolutely. Good. I'll be in the back if anyone needs me. Mira, come find me when you're ready. I want your take on what this place really needs. She gave a small nod, jaw tight with emotion. Okay. Russell and Nora walked into the break room. He exhaled for the first time in an hour, rubbing the back of his neck. Nora leaned against the wall. You handled that clean, she said. I should have done it sooner. Then let's make sure we never have to do it again. He nodded once. Outside the break room, laughter rose faintly from the front. Real laughter this time. Not forced. Not bitter. The kind that filled space instead of draining it. And for the first time in a long while, Russell felt like the company his father built was still in there, buried under neglect and noise, but not broken. Not if people like Mira still showed up every day. The next week started quietly. No grand announcements. No press releases. Just a series of deliberate steps. Russell returned to Store 9 early Monday, this time through the back entrance. Mira was already there, sleeves rolled up, unpacking a fresh delivery of milk crates. She didn't look up when the door opened, assuming it was Javier. You're early, he said. She straightened, startled for a moment, then relaxed. Didn't want to be late on my first day with the new title. Wasn't expecting you to be restocking the fridge. Still needs doing, doesn't it? He stepped beside her and lifted a crate. You'll burn out if you try to do everything yourself. I'm used to it. You don't have to be anymore. That day, Russell stayed out of the way. He sat at a side table in the café, laptop open, quietly observing but not interfering. The new staffing plan he'd pushed through meant a second shift lead would start next week, and a float barista from a nearby store was covering mornings until then. It wasn't ideal, but it was a start. Mid-morning, Mira approached his table, rubbing her wrist. Got a minute? Of course. She sat across from him, glancing around before speaking. Can I ask something and get a straight answer? Always. You really planning to fix the store? Not just for now, but for good. He closed the laptop. Yes, but I want your input on how. She hesitated, folding her hands. First thing? Drop the assumption that every store runs the same. They don't. This location gets more foot traffic from the bus line, more students, more people who sit for hours. We burn through supplies faster. Our shift schedule can't look like the one across town. Then we change it. Second thing, the training materials we have are outdated. We're still telling new hires how to clean a machine we replaced a year ago. He nodded once. What would you do differently? Update it. Make training local. Let each store adjust the checklist based on their equipment. And stop putting all the training on whoever's been here the longest. That's how bad habits spread. He typed a short note. Anything else? Yeah. We need someone who checks in more than once a week. Not just a text. I'm not saying we need a babysitter. Just someone who notices if things are slipping before they fall apart. He looked up from the keyboard. Would you be willing to be that person, long term? She blinked. You mean regional? Eventually. If you want it. But right now, I want you to build this store into the model. Whatever you need, equipment, staff, time, let me know. I'll approve it unless it's insane. She smiled for the first time that morning. I'll try to keep it sane. Try hard. He watched her walk back to the counter, where Javier was showing the float barista how to fix a clogged steam wand. The atmosphere already felt different. Not lighter, not yet, but steadier. The next few days followed a careful rhythm. Mira began holding short huddles before each shift, not long meetings, just quick rundowns. Who was doing what to watch for, where they were low. Russell returned each morning, but stayed out of their path. He noticed customers lingering longer, not because they had to wait, but because the place felt less tense. The music had returned, low and warm. The tip jar filled faster. And Mira, even on tired feet, had started taking 5-minute breaks, something she hadn't done in weeks. On Thursday, Russell called a meeting in the back room. Mira, Javier, the float barista, and a new hire named Ava gathered around the small table. Nora joined by video call projected on a small tablet. Russell leaned forward. Let's talk about what's next. Mira folded her arms. We're staying afloat with the extra help. But it's not sustainable. We need 2 permanent hires. 1 for evening close, 1 for weekends. And someone needs to be trained as a backup opener. Javier's been doing doubles. Russell looked at Javier. You okay? Javier shrugged. I'm fine. Just don't want to drop the ball. You won't, Mira said. But you shouldn't have to keep covering. We need balance. He nodded. Russell turned back to Mira. Post the positions. Don't wait for corporate. Just email HR the names once you've interviewed them. She hesitated. I've never interviewed anyone. You will now. Nora will send you a checklist. Use it, but trust your gut. The screen flickered as Nora spoke. Also, I'll be scheduling a visit next month. Quietly, just to see how things are progressing. No suits. No clipboards. Ava leaned in, curious. Is every store getting this kind of attention? Eventually, Russell said. But this one's the first. Because someone here did the right thing when nobody was watching. He looked at Mira. And we don't ignore that. The meeting ended with no applause, no dramatic flourish. Just a quiet sense that things were finally moving in the right direction. By the following week, the cafe had 2 interviews lined up. One was a former barista returning to work after maternity leave. The other was a student studying hospitality management. Mira had organized both, scheduled them during slower hours, and arranged for Javier to shadow the register while she handled questions. Russell only returned once that week. Briefly, he didn't go inside. He stood outside the window, watching from a distance as Mira laughed with a customer holding a toddler on their hip. Javier passed a drink across the counter with a nod. The student barista now hired was cleaning the counter without being asked. He didn't need to step in. As he walked back to the car, his phone buzzed. A message from Nora. New survey results from Store 9. Customer satisfaction up 22%. Employee engagement up 35%. Highest jump in the district. He stared at the message for a moment, then pocketed the phone. At the next board meeting, he'd share the numbers. But he wouldn't mention Myra's name. Not yet. She didn't need recognition from executives who had never stepped foot in her store. Not yet. Her work would speak louder. Back at headquarters, Russell sat at his desk and opened a blank document. He titled it, Rebuilding from the Ground Floor. Then he wrote the first line. What happens when the person holding everything together doesn't have the title but has all the heart? He paused. That was the story now. And this time he was going to pay attention.